For the Builder tool on the item, we're going to go through our item list of properties here and set these up. The first thing you want to do with an item is actually declare it as an item. So we're going to say enable as item. The cost to carry, so remember if you've looked at the inventory for items, for instance, a player would have the enable option for an inventory and how much they can carry on them. Well, if that was the case, remember you have a cost to carry. You could say this was 5, which would be the limit to it, so the player can only carry one item. We're going to start this one though just at 1. All right, and there are a handful of different things you can use, how you can actually set it up. For the item, you can actually say item type and where it's going to be used. Currently, usable, consumable are the two main ones that we actually use. The wearable and the carryable, that you can carry it, but the wearable isn't actually set up yet. So it's here, and then eventually we'll have it so that you can pick up a hat, and then the hat's going to be placed in an area on the other tile object and can be wearable. For these though, let's go ahead and keep going down. The item pickup state, we're just going to say add and equip, meaning just that instantly when you pick it up, instead of going to the inventory, you'll pick it up and be able to use it. On the hurt option, die options, this is more of just a if you want to. You can say that when the player is hurt, think Sonic, you get hurt and then the coins fall out. Same idea if you get hurt, and then you can have it so that the equipped items fall out, all the items fall out, or none of them do. You can also say that they get destroyed when they do fall out so that no one can use them. On die, you can say you keep your weapon or your item, and or you could say if it's usable, then it gets dropped out for others. Alright, and then also on this one is an option to lock item direction. This means that if you want to have an item that is only going to be in, we'll say like above your player, and even though your joystick's moving different directions, you could actually set it to this so that it's only going to be the top of it, or only in front and left or right of it. Alright, we're not enabling our item lock though, just to make sure you understand. Okay, and the last one is going to be the show item, combine with holder, separate, and hide on pickup. This is basically saying so this was a separate image that gets connected to a player image, and they're either drawn together as one image or they're drawn as two different ones. If you say combine, what you're saying is that you're going to call up a new set of animations. The separate means that both sets of animations play together. So this is how you can have a object like a weapon on top of a character, but it can be on top of multiple because they're just simply two different images on top of each other. And then you can say hide, and it'll just auto hide it when it gets picked up. Alright, so that's going to be the item, and then there's animations. So the animations, if you notice again, there's going to be a list of them right here. I'm just going to pause for a moment, and I'll just go through this, fill out the list, and then we'll keep going. Alright, so we've got the animations applied right here. And the first 4, we're actually using the item idle, so that when the player picks it up and puts it down, it'll just be those. Now, you can have 4 different animations applied. Remember, the pickup item idle is going to be a looping animation. The actual picking it up, though, is a single animation, so you can have a whole process of the item being picked up onto the player and all those good things. Same thing for the put down, and then the put down idle is the looping. Alright, so we have the hold item, which is all the different states for the 8 directions. And then we have the use item, which is all the different states for it. Alright, so those are going to be our animations. We'll go ahead and roll this up. Same process again. If you have the audio clip with it, then you can add the audio clips onto it. And this is just simply a default set. This is why we're not putting animations assigned to it. This is kind of like the barest minimum that you can get away with in terms of putting an object in and actually using it. So we're trying to keep it as simple as possible. Alright, so we have a item carry direction. So we're saying that we can actually carry the item in all directions, and then there's also a use direction. So again, the hold, this would be item hold direction, carry direction, and then the using it is also saying which direction you can and can't use it. So you may only be able to use it when you're facing up. So you could say turn all these off. The only option to use for up would be this one. Alright, and that's going to carry directly over into your button pushing to actually be able to activate Any item is going to be looking at those two right there for how you can hold it and how you can use it. The item socket, standing, and crouching. So now this is going to be based on where is it located for the player. So for instance, the actual item is like a little hammer. If we're using our default character, we may just want the item right in the center, and it's just going to rotate around. It's going to play the animations right here. However, you may want something like, for instance, one of the items will be a sword, and we'll want the sword to be offset from the player outside of the player. So the socket stand is where you're going to do that. You'll have the XY options for those. Same thing for the socket crouching. So there's two states to a player. They can stand or they can crouch. So both are going to be set up so that if you do crouch, then the weapon goes to that side, to that state as well, so it looks like it follows with the player correctly. Alright, so those are going to be the two item socket pieces. Again, they're all zeros, which is fine for the animations that we have for it. The item depth is going to be the offset in front or behind the player. I'm going to go ahead and choose in front. We'll go ahead and just do one in front of the player for all of the states. That way, wherever the player moves around, the weapon, the item, is always in front of them. Alright, and then the last one for item, we're just going to say what type is it. The item can be different than the control of the player, meaning I can say the item is only horizontal, it only moves left and right, whereas the player could be 8-directional. Now you can also say that you're going to assign the item joystick to the player, which means if I did horizontal, you may have an 8-player direction character, but when it gets to the horizontal, it's going to force the player to only walk left and right. So it can be one of those that adds gameplay element to it. You may pick up a really large rock, and then instead of the player being able to run and do stuff, the player's speed is now reduced almost, maybe 10%. The player can no longer jump. So you can set up for the items, they can control the character's behavior, so that it kind of, again, it just adds another layer of gameplay as you start developing your games with it. And that would also be sure that that's how you use the override controls, and then you can use these two options. So we're going to not worry about assigning it here, but we are going to leave it for the 8 direction right there. Alright, so that'll wrap up our items for this object, and then the next step will just be go through more of the particulars about how to use the tile, the builder tool itself.